count. Now, if he wants to pass it from one side to the other in order to break pressure and then run like hell and have the pass, a long pass thrown to him, that's fine. If you want to pass it over and have it come back, that's okay. You know, but you got 5 seconds to release that ball. It used to be 5 seconds to catch it, but then they found out that, yeah, you could have the ball in the air for 4 seconds going, so they changed that.
How long before you have to pick it up? Like, let's say they
that will be a judgment call on the part of the official. If the ball is available to the player and he decides that he wants to walk around it and look at it while everybody's getting lined up, the official will say, it's at his disposal, he has it available, I'm starting my count. So it's really a judgment call on that. Screening, oh, and illegal screens. Okay. I had somebody yelling at me, or actually I was watching a game and they were yelling, well, that's a moving pick, that's a moving pick. So I pulled up my NFHS rule on my iPad and I pulled up the rule book and I did a search for moving screen. There is no foul for moving screen. The foul is if contact is made. That's when you have the foul. And that's when you have an illegal screen. Now, I've seen at the lower levels hundreds and hundreds of illegal screens. Because one, the offense will be out there dribbling and a teammate of the dribbler will come up right behind the person, face that way, okay? That's a foul. If he can't see me, I have to give him a step. Okay? He can't see me, here's where I can screen. If he can see me, short of contact. Short of contact. So you don't get to run in. You know, you gotta stop before you get there.
What if you're set? What if you're just standing where you are and he's backing up, guarding somebody, and then the guy dribbles around and he runs into you?
If I gave him that initial one step and I'm set, he runs into me, he's obligated to stop and go around.
Okay.
I hear coaches all the time, fight through the screens. They don't really mean push the guy over on his ass and run over him. They mean, okay, you got screen, get around him. Okay, now if the guy decides he wants to go over, now you could have a problem.
This is the other thing we see a lot. That somebody comes up and sets a nice screen, and they bring him over, and he leans a little bit,
Yep.
and catches me, it's a foul. And we hear this all the time, going, hey, he was set. But once he leans or once he turns, it's an offensive foul.
Everything's related to the shoulders. You're entitled to the shoulders down. If I hit somebody with my leg, I've set an illegal screen because my legs are wider than my shoulders. This is okay. This is okay. This is okay. This is not.
But you see a lot, they come up and the dribbler will go a little wide and they'll go like this. And then it's all different.
Yep.
And that's when we get a lot of yelling.
Yep. And a lot of that, and I watched it today, there must have been 50 screens that were set where the girl whiffed. She got up there to try and set that screen, and even as the player went by, she did this, never touched anything because the player went right on by. Okay? Now, another thing that we're taught as officials is RBSQ. Anybody know what RBSQ is? Rhythm, balance, speed, quickness. If you do anything to affect that, that's when you're going to look at a foul. But if you've got a player that gets bumped and you don't see them slowing down, you don't see him changing, you know, nothing that relates to rhythm, balance, speed, or quickness, you got nothing. Because if we called everything on that, it would be, why don't we just line them up and shoot free throws? How much fun is that going to be? Because that's what's going to happen. So you'll see, and they made a point of emphasis at the state level this year for slow whistles. See the play. See the play start, the play, and see the play finish. RBSQ, you got nothing. You hear a lot of coaches, and one. You know what? RBSQ, guy had no problem. He made it to the basket. He laid it in. Everything's going fine. We're going the other direction. Take the ball out of bounds and go. So those are some of the goodies. Okay, how many people know whether there's a foul called over the back or not?
No such thing.
There's no such foul as over the back. And again, what I did was I pulled out my little app, and up until this year, you used to be able to get the rule book in a PDF, which was really nice because it was a nice format and everything, and it was searchable. So you could put over the back. You won't find it anywhere in the rule or casebook. The whole key is displacement. John was talking about boxing out. You know, you can box out all you want, but as soon as you displace that defender, it's a foul. But he was just boxing out. Yeah. And rooted the guy 12 yards back. That's a foul. He rooted him back 1 yard. That's a foul. If the easiest way to explain it is you got a kid that's 6'5" being boxed out by a guy that's 4'11". There's no foul for being tall. If he can reach over and pick the ball out of the guy's hands in front of him, more power to him. It's not a foul. The way that little guy defends that is he gets into good rebounding position because now he's created width. Rather than just standing there like this, he's only yay wide. But if he gets into good rebounding position, he's now twice or 3 times as wide. So it's now more likely for that tall guy behind to move him forward. And now you got displacement, and now you've got a push, and you got a foul on the defense or on that rebounder, whether it be defense or offense. You got a foul on that rebounder, and we're going to do something about it. Reaching in. I did another search. I did find the word reach in the book about 22, 24 times, something like that. But not once was it related to a foul. It was all related to reaching through the boundary line, reaching this, reaching that, but never was it in association with the rule. I think 9 is fouls and violations, rule 9. Never in relationship to rule 9. It was more in play. So that's a reach. Yeah, it might well be, but it's not a foul. One of the things they made a special.
What is the technicality of that? Any contact with that?
Okay, then now you got to
reach in all you want. You just can't touch their hand.
You can't touch their arm. If the hand is in contact with the ball and I break that person's knuckle, that's not a foul. The hand's in contact with the ball, the hand is part of the ball. Now what happens is they usually make the contact in the wrist, and that's not part of the ball, and that's a foul. That's illegal use of the hands. So you'll see that's the signal, illegal use of the hands. Many times, and I actually had this happen about a week and a half ago in a game I was doing, and that's if you're getting to the point where you need to foul towards the end of the game to either put the team on the free throw line or get to the point where you get them, because you have fouls to give, to get them onto the free throw line. Make sure the players understand they need to play the ball. Make an attempt to play the ball. If they grab the guy's jersey, if they wrap their arms around them, it's an intentional foul by rule. 2 shots, ball out of bounds. Point closest to wherever the foul occurred. So the breakaway, kid goes down, he grabs a jersey, he grabs something, intentional foul, ball goes in, count the basket, 2 shots, ball out of bounds. Because the penalty for an intentional foul is 2 shots, ball out of bounds. Intentional foul on a three-pointer, three-pointer goes in, 2 shots, ball out of bounds. Ball doesn't go in, 3 shots, ball out of bounds. So you make sure you try and play the ball. Over and back. Who knows the little cliche that officials are taught as it relates to whether there's an over and back violation or not?
Both feet in the ball.
Pardon?
Both feet are in the ball.
That's what it takes to get the ball into the front court. Okay? There's another simple one. When you see the ball getting, everybody, it's in the front court. It's getting tossed around. Last touch, first touch. What team was the last touch in the front court? Okay? So I throw a pass to my teammate, and it gets deflected by the defender and goes into the back court. Last one to touch it in the front court is the defense. Anybody can go get it. Okay? If I throw it, the defender tips it. It then bounces off the knee of my teammate and goes into the back court, and my teammate goes and retrieves it. I've got an over and back violation. But the defense tipped it. You're right, I saw that. Isn't that cool? Yes, absolutely right. However, last one to touch it in the front court was the offense. First one to touch it in the back court was the offense. That by rule makes it an automatic over and back violation. We're going the other direction. So even if it's to the point where the ball gets tipped and it bounces and it's up in the air and they go and grab it, best to let it bounce. You want to let it bounce so that it then has backcourt status. Then you can go back and get it. But if it's passed, tipped again, it's in the air, grab it, boom, I got a problem. Hits, again, last to touch it is offense, bounces, first to touch it is offense, got a violation. Goes from the defense, hits the ground, bounces in the air, I go and grab it, I'm the first to touch it in the backcourt. As long as the defense was the last to touch it there, I'm fine. Make sense?
What if, for example, the defender tips it in the front court, and the next person offense to get it is straddling half court line?
If there's, okay, if the last person to touch it in the front court was the defense, and the offense then straddles the line and picks it up, you got nothing. Because I wasn't the last one to touch it in the front court.
On a sideline inbound play around half court, can there be a backcourt? Can there be an over and back violation depending on where the player comes from and catch the ball? So if I'm in the backcourt, I jump over the half court line and I catch an inbound pass from my front court?
Maybe. Okay? In general, there's what they call a throw-in exception. And that means that you can throw it from anywhere. Here's my division line, and I'm going to throw it in, I'm going that direction, and my teammate runs and jumps from here, grabs the ball and lands back here, you got nothing, because it's a throw-in. So it really doesn't matter. They can go all the way back, they can jump in the air, come down. The difference is when the throw-in ends. So if I go to throw it and the defender tips the ball, it's no longer a throw-in. Now if I jump from the front court, grab the ball in the air, and land in the back court, I have a violation.
The defender touched it.
I mean,
Because the throw-in ended. You can't have a throw-in exception if there's no longer a throw-in.
Perhaps no difference if you find a pick it up and dribble like that.
Because it's the throw-in, because if I left from the front court, who was the last to touch it in the front court? And I catch it and land in the back court. Who was the first to catch it in the back court, touch it in the back court? Because the throw-in ended. Now, if they let the ball bounce in the back court and go get it, you got no problem. Make sense? But at last touch, first touch is probably the easiest thing to remember. And if an official turns around and says, last touch, first touch, coach, you at least know what he's talking about. He saw it was touched, both front and back court. He knows who was the last to touch it. He knows who was the first to touch it. That's what's going to answer your question. Okay, John talked about swinging elbows. Okay, that's a point of emphasis this year. They made special effort because it's really a safety issue. You can clock somebody. If you make contact, you got a problem. You got a player control. You could potentially have an intentional foul. If I know that that player's back there,
Meta World Peace does it all the time.
yeah, but he's at the, you got to understand, he plays in a not basketball anymore league. You know, that is entertainment. The rules there are way different than us poor schmucks down here where we're playing basketball.
Elbows out without hitting anyone, okay.
That's fine. Chinning the rebound, that is correct technique.
If you
Grab
turn
the
and pivot then?
As long as the elbows aren't going any faster than the torso.
So as long as you pivot into...
That's okay. You know, but now if you still pivot and knock the guy on his, you still got a problem. But I mean, he can bring it down and he can pivot as long as the elbows aren't the ones that are going faster than the torso. You can't do this. You can do this.
If we see coaches go, get him off it, and that means start swinging the rope.
Yep. Kicking and fisting. Okay, who knows what the requirement is for a kick to have occurred?
Intention?
It's got to be intentional. It's got to be any part of the leg. I had one today. Defender's playing like this. Girl bounced a pass, hit her foot, bounced away. And I got a parent yelling, "That's a kick, that's a kick!" And I'm standing there saying, nope, it was not intentional, and the dribbler dribbled it off of the foot. That's not a kick, okay? So it's got to be intentional, any part of the leg. Used to be from the knee down, and about 2 years ago or 3 years ago, they changed it to any part of the leg. So even if I do up like this and it goes off my thigh, that's a kick. And the principle behind that is basketball is to be played with the hands and the feet. You can dribble and run, but you can't use it like soccer. It's not to be, it's intended not to be like soccer. Clock. You talked a little bit about the clock and the timing, things like that. Remember that anytime, if you've got a clock that's showing 0.3 of a second, it has to be a tap for it to count. That's the old Michigan State, Wisconsin I think it was that, where Wisconsin was playing Michigan State at, or it might have been Indiana, but they were playing Michigan State. Michigan State had a 55 game home win streak going. 0.3 of a second left, ball went in, Wisconsin grabbed it, launched one, or whoever the team was, launched one, ball went in, they counted the basket, Wisconsin wins, Michigan State's 55 game home win streak goes away. Said, you know what, it's probably physically impossible for anybody to really catch the ball and shoot it in 0.3 of a second. But you know what, in 0.4 of a second they can. So you'll see the officials when they see 0.3 on the clock, they'll turn around and do something like, you know, it's got to be a tip, it's got to be a tip, it's got to be a tap, it can't be a catch and shoot. And as soon as the player catches the ball, you'll see we're done. They'll blow the whistle. They won't even wait for the horn. They'll blow the whistle. Okay? If you have a clock that shows nothing but seconds, doesn't show 0.1 of a second, the game is not over until the horn sounds. Even though there's zeros up there, there's still fractions of a second until the horn goes off. Now, whether that happens around, who knows?
It'll show zeros, and then it'll be about a second away.
Boom, and then it, okay.
What was the fisting move?
Fisting, you can't punch the basketball. You can't, you'll see that somebody will jump up and they'll bang. You know, that's a volleyball. You know, they're trying to get the ball away. They can hit it with the open hand, but they can't punch it, fist it. Can't do that. I've covered most of the key elements in what I was trying to do. I'm going to look at a couple of notes that I scribbled here.
Who's got questions?
I
Yes,
got
sir.
a question on the timeout. The ball goes through the net. It's like 5 seconds. The coach is calling timeout. The ref doesn't hear him possibly, or when does the timeout come into play? When the ref blows the whistle to,
Okay.
when the guy calls it, or the whistle?
Remember, coaches, you can request a timeout. Only an official can grant it. Okay? If the ball goes through the hoop and it's bouncing there, the team that just scored can request a timeout, and if the official hears it, as long as the new inbounding team hasn't picked the ball up, he can grant the timeout to the coach. Okay? But as soon as that player picks up the ball, it's at his disposal. The defensive coach can't call timeout. So if you want it, it behooves you, that ball goes through the hoop, start yelling, timeout, timeout, timeout.
Can the, say I'm coaching the defensive team, and we're up 2. There's 10 seconds left. I say, hey ref, if they hit a 3, I immediately want a timeout. Can I do that pre-game?
You can tell him, but
Yeah.
you sure as heck, as soon as they hit the 3, better be asking for it.
Okay.
Because you didn't tell him what to do if they missed it. So you're making him coach.
Don't call a timeout.
So he's going to stand there, and officials that are in game awareness, you know,
Yeah,
especially
they'll be
the
watching
two-person,
that. They'll be watching.
they'll be watching, and they're going to be standing, they're going to be backing up, and you're going to be standing right there so that they can hear you ask for it right away. I had a guy ask me today, he says, I want a timeout on a made free throw. Okay, girl misses the free throw. I backed up and I waited and I said, okay, you know, I'm listening. What do you want? What do you want? Well, it happened to have a violation and out of bounds. And I looked at him and he says, yeah, I want a timeout. Okay, I'll give him the timeout. Boom, here. I'll grant him that timeout. Now, if and we had a guy complain, he was on defense, the ball was handed to the inbounder, the defensive coach started yelling for a timeout. Sorry, you don't get it. Okay, that's probably another good instance. Okay, ball squirting around on the floor, and you're yelling timeout, timeout, timeout. Number one, the official has to make sure a player has control, because he cannot grant a timeout while the ball is in the air, passing between teammates, even though the offense has the ball, and it's obviously going to go to that player. Coach is yelling, timeout, timeout, timeout. As soon as it's caught, you want a timeout? Timeout. Grant the timeout. So, scrum down on the ground, the ball's rolling around, who's got the ball? You know, the officials are going to, number one, go over and see who has the ball, and then by rule, who gets to call the timeout? There's 6 people on a team that can call timeout. The 5 players on the floor and the head coach. So the assistant doesn't get to call timeout. So the official,
I love when parents call the timeouts for me.
yeah, well, the parents will do it too. So the official has to turn around and at least make sure that he's got eye contact and knows that it's the head coach. Because the head coach may not want timeout. And it could be a kid yelling for timeout. It could be a parent. It could be an assistant coach. And the head coach has 1 timeout left. And he doesn't want to use it for that. Guess what? Yep. You want it? Okay. Now, who's got the ball? And by that time, it might be tied up. You know, we might be in a jump ball situation. In this case, you're going to say, you know what? We're going to go jump ball. So that's a good point. Anything else? There are a number of really good references. I buy them. A little bit of my background. I'm going into my 40th year of officiating basketball. I started in 1973, so I've seen a lot of basketball. I get the book every year. The state only gives us a book every other year. I buy one every year. I go through it. I take my test. I get one book called The Rules Simplified and Illustrated, which we on the, as officials, call the comic book, because that's what it looks like, a comic book. So it's real easy to go through and see what they're talking about. They also have another book called Rules by Topic. So you can go and literally look up alternating possession. Okay, here's a good one. Inbounding team goes to throw the ball in. The defense deflects it and kicks it. What happens to the arrow? Got a 50-50 chance. Stays the same. Why? The throw-in never ended. It was a violation by the defense that caused the ball to become dead. So the throw-in never ending, you're still entitled to the throw-in, to the alternating possession throw-in. Okay, now flip that around. What happens if the offensive player does that?
Kicks the ball.
The arrow changes because the offense was the one that violated. They lose that alternating possession arrow, and it goes to the other. It will go to the other team. So, going to put the ball in play. Going to put it in right there. Except we're going to reverse the arrow. Okay, when does the arrow reverse?
Once the ball's in play.
When the ball's legally touched in bounds. You'll see a lot of parents running that clock, literally running that arrow. As soon as the ball's handed to somebody, they change the arrow. And no, wait, just wait. Let the ball get in bounds and then change it. So I'll hang around. Aaron's got some stuff. I don't want to take any more of his time.